I almost fired him twice. For real. But he's one of the most happiest guys I know now. You know what I mean? That's confirmation you're doing the right thing. When you meet a man with a frown, and then when you see him later on, hey, I ain't gonna lose back there. And you meet him later on, and he has a smile all the time. You know? So my voice is good. It's good to go. All right, well, you know me, y'all heard me 1,000 times. What I want to do is, right, I'm going to introduce a gentleman, right? His name is Corey Parks. And I met him on YouTube. Now, y'all figure, how you meet somebody on YouTube? All right, well, you know me, I do my homework, and I just punched in re-entry. And he came on, somebody was interviewing, he was on a show being interviewed. And the guy that was interviewing him, he had such an extraordinary story. And the guy that was interviewing him wasn't pulling it out. I'm like, yo, wait a minute, what's going on, right? And he wasn't pulling it out of me like he should have. So I said, you know what? Let me start my own TV show and show him how it's done. Seriously, that's how it happened. I walked out into the hallway, and my chief of staff, Dr. Carol Simmons, it's just like God had just planted her there, because she didn't know what she was doing. She was just standing there. And I said, Doc, I got an idea. Pointed to her office. We went into the office. She said, what's that idea? I said, I want to do my own TV show. She said, I know just the guy. And she mentioned my producer, Johnny, right there. She said, this is what he does. I said, what? She said, let me call him. I said, no, where he at? And she told me. I said, who you calling for? I'm driving over there. And when I pulled up, Johnny can test for this, it's like he was sitting there waiting for me. He don't know me. He ain't know me. I pulled up, walked right in. I said, yo, this is what I need to get done. He said, yo, I got this, I got that, I got the Comcast Connect, I got this, I got that, let's go. He said, but you gotta get some people to do the interview. I brought in all the big wigs. He said, whoa, we got to slow down for a minute. But that's how it went down. When you find something that's in your heart and it's right, do it. You're not going to fail. You might get a few setbacks, but you're not going to fail. You're not going to fail at all. Just do it. Believe in yourself, believe in your mission, and God will put people around you to help you move forward, to get stuff done. But you gotta believe it. You gotta embrace the struggle. I'm telling y'all, I see some of the looks in your eyes, man. Listen to me, I had that look. It's gonna be all right. Because my favorite saying is, well, one of my favorite saying is this: your worst day out here is better than your best day in here. So if you really think you're going through it, like my wife and I was speaking the other day, and we was talking about our situation, and we saw, right after that, we saw a car. I was taking her to college. She just started college. Yeah. Sometimes she keep up with me. But that's what's up, though. But we saw a car on fire with a person in it. And the fire people was there trying to break the window to get her out. And I looked at my wife, I said, we still got complaints? She's like, no. And that's how you gotta look at life. Somebody got it worse than you. We saw 2 homeless people sleeping downtown on our way to work every morning. And I said to my wife, they all bundled up in the cold in sleeping bags. And I'm looking at it one way, I said, oh, that's some Bonnie and Clyde stuff there. That's what's up, she got his back. My wife said, shoot. Me, one of us couldn't think our way out of that situation. Both of us 2 years together, we both got in that situation. One of us got to be able to think our way out. And that means you got to use your head, man. Because some of us get frustrated because the job ain't come right, or the girl ain't, baby mama ain't acting right, or the halfway house ain't got your paper right, or whatever the situation may be. All that is a bunch of excuses. Because in reality, time won't pass. You're going to get out. You're back in society, and responsibility is handed back to you. Now, what you going to do with it? What you going to do with responsibility? when it's given back to you. And you have to be responsible for it, because when it was taken from you, you was irresponsible. Remember, the government says this, and you can steal this one too, Corey. The government says this. It's 24 hours in a day. Give me 8 legal hours of working. The other 16 is still yours, as long as you live it legally. Violate my 16, I'll take the whole 24. And that's why they say lockdown 24 hours a day. Because you violated your 24 hours. Now they took it from you and you housed by them now. Instead of for walking in your house and seeing your wife, your children, and so forth, because of your poor decision making. It gets you jammed up every single time. We here to learn how to stay out of jail, because we all, everybody in this group that's been incarcerated know how to go. We already proved that. Now let's prove we can stay home. When I first came home, I met an old friend of mine. He passed away now, but the first thing he said to me when he saw me, he shook my hand, gave me a hug, and said, now give me out here what you gave them in there. He said, you gave me 22 in there, now give me 22 out here. Whoa. And that's what I'm working on. So without further ado, I'm going to bring up Arthur Corey Parks. Give my hand.
Tracy touched on some key factors. How that going today? Shout out to Philly. You know, it bothers me a lot. Like, you know, when we talk about a person in the fire, we talk about homeless people. That's what life brings us. People on the sidewalk shot dead. People on the sidewalk trying to sell crack, sell dope. Addicted parents. Crack babies. The street life, that addiction. We all embrace that. We all guilty of it. Personally, I was in the game since I was 20 years old. I remember selling crack cocaine on 117th Street in Lexington Avenue. And I had no shame about it. Why? Because I felt power in it. I felt like I was doing the right thing. So from that point, I got involved in gangs. When the Bloods first came to New York City, I was the first one on that train. And sadly to say, I did anything to be accepted in that lifestyle. So at 16 years old, I was arrested for multiple charges: attempted murder, gang assault, conspiracy, where I served 15 years of my life straight. I know I don't look like it, but I served 15 years in state prison. I've been home. Next month will be 3 years. But during that time in prison, I had many different turns in life. I know what it's like to be in this cell hungry. I know what it's like to say, damn, when I'm going home, I got 8 years to the board, I got 9 years to the board, just to be considered for release. I know what it's like to have war, seeing people stabbed, murdered in prison, seeing police brutality in prison. I know what it's like to be in a hole. I remember serving 2.5 years straight in the box, because I couldn't control my own emotions. I felt like that was the right way to go, so I acted out. Same thing I did on the streets. Because what I learned is that if you don't know how to process your emotions correctly, there is no empathy. There's only apathy. But I was never taught how to process those emotions. That's not something that we are really taught in our household most of the time, because our parents most likely didn't know how to process their own emotions. But I learned that when you come in tune with your feelings, And I'm saying this for the toughest gangsters out there, the toughest images out there. When you come in tune with your feelings, then you're going to start to be a different person. Then you can care for that person that you might be able to ready to get laid down. That person that you're ready to kill. That person that you're ready to sell drugs to. When you start to come in tune with yourself, those feelings is key. Learn how to process those feelings. And it's going to be hard even now because a lot of us have been going through that process for so long, practicing apathy. We've been empty. Because what? The streets taught us that. For most of us, the streets was our parents. That's what we looked up to. So during my time incarcerated, I began to self-teach myself, facilitate classes, and I found a voice in there. I found my niche. I began to pen my books in prison. I wrote about 4 books while I was incarcerated. But the challenge for me was this, because I know a lot of people that wrote books, I know a lot of people that wrote game plans, but when they got out, they didn't take 1 foot forward. They didn't take 1 foot forward at all. And when we talk about re-entry, you have to believe in yourself. You can't no longer be recruited by the doubters. Because there's going to always be people that say you ain't shit. You ain't going nowhere. You're a felon. You ain't worth it. And you got to tell yourself in your mind, watch this. When I went to parole board, I went to 5 parole boards. And they always ask you in your parole summaries, what you going to do when you go home? I said, well, I want to be a motivational speaker, I want to write books, I want to work with youth. They laughed at me. They laughed at me. But I refused to be recruited by the doubters. So now you see my book is out now, because I came home and I took a foot forward. The same thing with you, gentlemen. It's rough out here, I get it. And when you're unfamiliar to a certain process, it can hinder you. It can scare you. But it's back to those feelings. You become in tune with your feelings and understand, all right, it's okay for me to be scared, to be afraid, but let me take my foot forward. Because your re-entry is important. Your re-entry is not just for you. A successful re-entry is for all those people that they plan in prison for, like their kids. So they've been in jails every day. And they get funding for those jails every day. And most of those jails is in where? Rural areas. Ain't none of that money coming back to your hood, your community. So we have to change what? The dynamics first with ourselves. And it's not an easy process. Like I said, I've been home 3 years. In those 3 years, I put books out. I'm an activist in the community. I work with the anti-gun violence movement, a lot of youth, a lot of gangs. I started my own nonprofit, Success is a Journey. I went back to college. I'll be graduating with a 4-year degree this year. It'll be 2 years I was in school, and I'm dedicated. You got to say that same thing to yourself. Plan. Malcolm X said it best. If you fail to plan, you plan to fail. If you fail to plan, you plan to fail. So you got to sit down and utilize people like the re-entry program that Tracy has. Find a mentor. I don't care if you're 60 years old, you need a mentor. You need somebody that can help you that's been out here. Look for people that's been out here doing it. I always look for mentors. Because I understand that I can't do it alone. There's no one that has made success by themselves. Point them out. Every successful person has somebody. So utilize that, but it's back to what? Coming in tune with those feelings, processing your emotions correctly. Because a lot of us have an image inside. We feel that we don't need to ask nobody for help. But sadly to say, we do need help. All of us. I look for mentors every day. One of the things that happened to me in prison, right? I remember I was in the mess hall. I was eating chow. I was in Elmira. And on my way back to the cell block, I was at G block. I'm in my cell. Somebody called my name. Somebody called my government name, Corey. And I'm like, who is that? He's like, it's your father. So now I'm stuck with my father. So I said, all right, I'll see you at rec. So we go to recreation, and when we see each other, we share the what? A common failure. We both was now an inmate and a statistic. And I could see in my father's eyes at that moment that he was ashamed. He felt like he couldn't even help his own son get out of that situation. We began to build a relationship, all the animosity I had, all the misunderstandings I had, all the questions I had, I was able to get out of the way. That's the blessing for me. Because I held on to so much animosity from him not being in my life that it was a shame. But we began to build that bond. But one day something tragic happened. I got a phone call. He was moved to another facility, and I got a phone call from the chaplain, from the recreation boat to go see the chaplain. And when I got there, he said, your father's dead, your father died. So now I'm stuck. I'm like, damn. We had all these plans to come out in the community, get a restaurant, do some good things together. But he died. And the circumstances around his death was that him and the officer got into an altercation. And once you fight an officer, there's going to be many people coming after him. So he was beaten, and he wasn't given proper medical attention, and he walked down in his sleep. He had a blood clot in his leg that went to his heart. And that's how he died. He died in the box. He died in solitary confinement. So for me, I had a phobia from that point. I was like, I don't want to die in a prison cell. Because most likely, if you ain't got nobody to come get you, they're going to put you in the backyard. Do I want that to be my legacy? So you got to ask yourself that question. Do you want that to be your legacy? Do you want to die in a prison cell? Do you want to die on these blocks? It ain't like we died like Martin Luther King or Malcolm X was dying. They died for something at least. We died for nothing. I was on the train, and I'm going to close with this. I was on the train maybe about a couple of weeks ago, and they had these two kids that came on the train, they were saying their poetry. So I'm listening to them, right? And they talk about single parent households, selling drugs, not having their fathers there, but also being shot by the police. It's not safe for me to go outside. And how they ended was that I just want to die successful. So I'm looking at them, I said, damn, what does that mean? What does dying successful mean? If you ask most old timers, it's like, well, I took care of my family, I got my grandkids, I left something behind for them when I left. But dying successful ain't being shot in the street or going to jail for the rest of your life. That's not dying successful. So I'll leave you with that question. And I want y'all to come up with your own answer at some point in your life. What is dying successful? Before you get there, you gotta live successfully. Thank you.